dark universe of the far future can seem a terrifying and nightmarish realm in which only death, warfare and horrors exist, where only those with superhuman power, both physical and mental, as well as the hardware to back up those traits, can exist and survive. But this of course is not the case. As we know, while the Astartes of the Emperor are many, there are still very scattered and few of them compared with the humans of the Imperium. And it's true that many worlds of the Imperium are often lost to warfare and Xenos incursions. However, many worlds do exist that will rarely see conflict, and some which are even peaceful. Humanity still exists in the far future, and its daily goings-on and dealings exist as much as they would have always. Civilians on any number of different planet types go about their businesses and lives and relationships and not worrying, or not trying to worry too much, about the very real horrors that exist out in the darkness of space. As has always been the way, there are those who have and those who have not, and in between those who will try and have a little bit more by whatever means that they can. To that end though, the nobility and the higher class elements of Imperial worlds are not all fat, lazy and spend time counting their gold. There are those who exist who seek exploration, adventure, and of course to the ambitious come equally the rewards. Rogue traders are something akin to a freelance trader, yet they also combine exploration and merchant into the mix. The rogue description is very apt, for those individuals and their retinues are undoubtedly as skillful with their words as they are their weapons. They are often Imperial nobles through bloodlines that are given a degree of independence far beyond any ordinary Imperial citizen, who will likely be committed to a life of servitude and labour. The traders dream about and explore the stars beyond, at their own peril of course. Some will be more akin to a band of smugglers, while others carry Imperial military forces. In rare cases, even Astartes, should the cause warrant it. Mostly they spend their time trading and exploring the uncharted regions of the galaxy, which some might say is more than a little bit risky, knowing what we know of the galaxy in the far future. Yet also there are many glories to be discovered, both technologically and to expand the Imperium itself to any undiscovered or lost human planets. Of course, there's always the vague hope that they might also discover some lost piece of Dark Age of technology equipment that will give the Imperium a jump forward in its hardware. They may also discover planets of Xenos that are ready to be conquered and colonized by the Imperium by means of warfare, planets with resources that once they have been scoured and purged of Xenos can be exploited to fuel and supply the Imperium's needs. Rogue traders rely on something known as a warrant of trade in order to carry out their activities without being curtailed by Imperial forces. These are essentially a legal document that describes the traders' accepted limits for their missions and operations. Rogue traders, you see, are not just simple nobles or Imperial citizens. They are important and powerful human figures who give genuine and tangible benefits to the Imperium. Their activities are far from frivolous and come with significant risks to themselves. The enduring spirit of the traders comes from the ownership of these Imperial warrants, and it grants upon them something more important than a powerful ship, more valuable than a hoard of treasures or technology, and rarer than something most millions of Imperial citizens could dare to dream of, living within the vast anonymous towering citadels of humanity, the hive cities. The warrant grants to rogue traders something simple, but with a value beyond estimation: freedom. Rogue traders originate from the early days of the Emperor's Great Crusade, as the Imperial expeditionary fleets roared out across the galaxy to deliver the Imperial truth to the many worlds lost by humanity. Scouting ahead of these main fleets were hundreds and even thousands of smaller ships. These independent servants of the Emperor would become known as rogue trader militants. Many were former rulers of different realms the Emperor had dominated during the unification wars on Earth, and as new worlds were conquered, so did they gain new rogue traders to assist them in exploring the vast void of space. This task was undoubtedly extremely dangerous. Scouting so far ahead of the main fleet put the rogue traders at risk of any number of unknown threats, environmental or sentient alike. Because of this, they often found themselves having to regularly improvise, repair their ships and equipment by whatever means necessary, and would often be seen when returning to the fleet far from a coherent vision of that when they departed. They would be seen to now be a ramshackle, and sometimes their ships would simply be looted or stolen from Xenos or human foe alike. These early rogue traders coming out of the Wars of Terror were forbidden by the Emperor to return there, and many would die or be simply never heard from again, lost into the unknown darkness to horrors that would either consume, enslave, or worse. When it comes to the Imperium, it's nothing if not suffocatingly oppressive, a structure which inflicts brutally severe consequences, where life and death on scales previously unimaginable are a regular and common occurrence. Many civilians will live out their lives barely knowing anything beyond their small and relatively insignificant existences. Not so for the traders. They can travel where they can dream, and they can achieve what their willpower and enduring spirits bring onto them. They know lives that almost none can imagine within human society in the dark and far future, where the Emperor's word is gospel and the punishments to speak otherwise are often capitally punishable. A rogue trader will often hail from a long line of notable leaders and commanders within the Imperium. Notability, though, is not always a prerequisite. They could also come forward from the ranks of powerful family within the Adeptus Terra, Imperial Navy or Militarum. As explorers in the more dangerous reaches of space where unknown horrors await you at every turn, having a reliable crew is invaluable. Each rogue trader will surround themselves with only the most skillful and trustworthy crews. They'll be experts in diplomacy, exploration and combat. Successful rogue traders will not only choose their team though based on obvious traits and abilities, but be able to see beyond this to abilities and attributes that maybe their entourage are not even aware of themselves. To be a rogue trader, you need to be intuitive, to use your wits and trust your instincts. These are just as important as trained skills, and more importantly, that their intuitions do not lead them down a path of despair and destruction. Because being isolated from the natural protection of the Imperium and its forces, rogue traders and their retinue are entirely self-reliant. As such, they spend time and investment to ensure their ships and personal hardware are the best that they can source. They may even have access to adapted artificer power armor, and it's worth noting that non-Astartes can wear power armor, but these will be adapted for human size and they won't gain the full benefits of it. Only Astartes have the body modification that allows their armor to be a second skin for them. Rogue traders will have any number of personal defense systems, including potentially force fields and the like. Sometimes this can even be of Xenos origin, if they discovered it in their travels, and they'll also use so-called digital weapons. Now, these are not digital in the sense of them being computer related. The digital phrasing refers to them being fitted into rings, so a digital being another word for your finger. So these digital weapons are very advanced technology. Being fitted into such a small device but still bearing enough power to impact like a full weapon. These can be flamers, pistols, las weapons or needle pistols, and some of these digital weapons are known to be crafted by the experts in weapon adaptation and upgrading, the ape-like Jacaro. However, it's worth remembering that using a weapon that is touched by a Xenos is not a crime if you happen to be an Inquisitor or a rogue trader, but it's not advisable for your average citizen. For a rogue trader, being self-reliant and sure of yourself and your crew's ability is essential. The alternative is almost certain death in fairly short order, so preparing to the nth degree is the only way to improve your own odds, and if that means investing in a little bit of Xenos tech along the way, then so be it. The imperial wants of trade that the rogue traders hold rightfully in such high regard are more though than just a personal business remit. They enable rogue traders freedoms unthinkable to your average citizen. For example, the warrant will allow many traders to interact with Xenos races and cultures that are forbidden for normal Imperium forces even to contact. The only caveat being that it must be in the good interests of the Imperium, and a trader would have to demonstrate this if they were called upon to justify their actions. The punishment for misusing this judgment, surprisingly, or worse, turning it against the Imperium for a rogue trader's own personal achievements would be severe. Inquisitors would be queuing up and making it a personal mission to ensure such an individual would be brought swiftly to face the most severe punishment for likely not just themselves, but also for their extended family. With that still in mind, it's why with fair reason many rogue traders are fairly considered strongly committed to the Imperial cause, even if that means they do play things pretty close to the line from time to time. Still, for all those who are very pious, there are equally those who operate more like pirates under the facade of Imperial authority, charming in one moment and cutting throats in the next. Some of these more rogue of rogue traders may even recruit Xenos or mutants into their crew, such is their confidence in their own ability to avoid Imperial repercussions. Others may be even more unstable, in some cases even destroying worlds. abusing technology, and for example taking morbid curiosity in dissecting still living Xenos out of sheer curiosity. Regardless of their more morally absent leanings, the one constant is that any rogue trader who can survive more than a few tours out beyond Imperial space will be an exceptional individual. Driven by strong personal desires and aspirations that are likely unknown to others, a strange mix of pirate, diplomat, trader, merchant, mercenary, and missionary, rogue traders are always different and do not conform to any expected template. They could have a whole fleet supporting them through their powerful wealth and influence, or they could be rattling around in a barely functional ancient ship that by all rights should have been destroyed long ago. A common problem for any rogue trader is that they often spend years away from Imperial systems and worlds. On returning to offload their discoveries and potentially take on new recruits, they may, when returning into Imperial space, run into the bureaucracy of the Adeptus Terra, or worse, the Inquisition. Because rogue traders become accustomed to their relatively unusual freedom, combined with the fact their family names often give them significant weight in many matters related to Imperial administration, they can find themselves straying into dangerous territory on returning home, especially should they cross the wrong Imperial representative on the wrong day. After years of living by their own rules, it's a cold comfort to return to the Imperium and remember they must abide by its laws and limitations. And it's easy to forget how many servants of the Imperium at all levels take an extreme pride in carrying out these rules and regulations to an almost fanatical level of specificity. Many rogue traders see themselves as a kind of sovereign citizen and disagree that the Imperium has any authority over them at all. This, coupled with the fact that over many years away from the Imperial society, their perspectives and ideologies can become not distorted so much as perhaps clouded. All of these factors can lead them into dangerous confrontations, more especially though if an inquisitor or powerful Imperial lord may learn they have some advantageous piece of technology that could be used to raise their status. What's that? I think I hear Tzeentch whispering in the darkness about the ever-insatiable appetite of mankind to step over one another to achieve ever more personal gain. Rogue traders are nothing if not individual. They represent humanity in perhaps its truest form in the grim darkness of the future. Adventurous, sometimes zealous, always ambitious, intuitive, and nearly always risk-takers. A rogue trader will always be thinking of the potential and then how to achieve it, whether that means locating lost ancestors or making dangerous deals on the fringes of known space. It's said that some rogue traders have even attempted to cross the starless voids of intergalactic space outside the galaxy, where so far only the Tyranids have known to have travelled. The distances here are difficult to comprehend, and their success or failure is simply unknown. While a rogue trader will keep their most skillful and experienced personal crew close with them for the duration of their quests, and many will become like a family staying together for decades, if not even becoming dynasties. But even so, they often still require additional assistance and support for their extended operations. To this end, and considering the significant personal power a rogue trader will carry, they may often be supported by additional spacecraft that can be slow-dragging industrial freighters, passenger carriers bearing volunteer settlers for new planets to be established in the name of the Imperium, or they may often have some form of Imperial troop force as well to deal with any threat which may rear its Xenos head. And this supporting force will usually be human in nature. However, sometimes if a mission is planned and deemed significant enough, they may also be accompanied by a small tactical force of Space Marines to ensure they have the heavy support necessary to ensure success. Traders, while hailing from any number of backgrounds, often will have some experience serving in the Imperial Navy, and that is the military force of Imperial starships. This is fairly understandable when you consider they spend significant time aboard space vessels exploring the galaxy and will at times be required to organise and coordinate fleet-sized collaborations of ships. They also will often have knowledge of where they're able to find repairs and who can be relied upon for, say, storing suspect cargoes or generally knowing when to look the other way. That detailed knowledge of friends and acquaintances throughout Imperial systems and beyond are just an example of how rogue traders are able to survive and connect with lifelines as and when necessary. But still, rogue traders can also originate from more conventional military forces like the Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard. Anybody surviving long enough to rise through the vast and anonymous ranks of the Imperium's best meat fodder may be identified and drawn forward as a potential recipient of a warrant of trade. And rogue traders from this more ground-pounding background will use their knowledge of this to strengthen their forces as they leave the confines of the Imperium. Usually this means bringing with them a significant force of troops and using their confident strategic knowledge to be able to unleash earth-shattering planetary assaults followed by unstoppable ground assaults. Unlike ordinary Imperial Guard units though, they may find themselves with little, if any, support and consequently have to resort to non-standardized procedures. They may also have to recruit and train new infantry on the fly as they discover new worlds with human habitation. Many Imperial Guardsmen with rogue trader missions will end up with a significantly different and arguably more advanced skill set than their more standardized forces, as they have to cope with almost unknowable conditions and learn to survive and win with little if any support. And then of course there are the Administratum rogue traders. These individuals will be, to a degree, less military orientated, and instead rely on sheer ruthlessness, and who are experts at manipulation, scheming, and coldly calculating how to exploit anyone and anything to their own end. These individuals will be very much all about how to better themselves by any means necessary, and more than likely already have a little blood on their hands. Within the halls of the Imperial administration, this is clearly not the most favourable set of traits to have, and will more than likely eventually lead to that individual running into trouble. However, at the same time, out in the dark voids of space, these traits are suddenly a lot more positive. This style of rogue trader is all the more about cunning and the slow blade, more likely to find an assigned assassin by your bedside than an Imperial army bearing down on you. Unlike their more proud and even affluent comparisons, Administratum traders may be all the more subtle, preferring to remain relatively inconspicuous and present themselves as much more understated, less the gold and trimmed appearances of their more militarial counterparts. This more reserved style is of course all a deception, and these rogue traders are more than equally able to defend themselves personally and instead allow their enemies' overconfidence to be their inevitable downfall. Merchants are another source for rogue traders, and while long-distance trading is not common, many Imperial systems do rely on localized trading between planets for various goods, both essential and luxury. The risks of transporting these goods though are numerous, and so merchant traders of either small business concerns to powerful corporations will regularly require mercenaries to ensure their goods are not destroyed, lost or ripped off. Rogue traders from a merchant background will be astute in their art of making a deal and will be able to bring significant resources to their missions. This may be through ownership of materials and assets or by obligated agreements that are called in. Mercantile rogue traders can often be some of the most luxuriantly outfitted, both personally and in their ships, using their wealth and personal tastes to bleed into everything they exude. This luxury should not deceive though, because they will be just as ruthless and capable as any other trader. In a galaxy as violent as that of the late 41st millennium, you don't keep your assets without being a highly capable individual who knows how to defend what you have and secure what you need. Imperial planetary governors are another source for rogue trader recruitment. It's less common than perhaps the other sources for being granted a warrant of trade, and not always a positive one either. It could be, for example, that said governor's planet has been unfortunately lost to some Xenos and its population exterminated. Yet the governor may have been able to salvage some ships and a personal defense force when leaving the planet. To that end, the Imperium, while having the option to lay blame and recriminations at his door, may also choose to send them out into the stars to try to do some good out of a bad situation. Many of these rogue traders will have a cross to bear and seek to do relative right by their lost citizenry, fighting harder and with more zeal than their relative counterparts, driven by loss, shame, guilt, and determination to prove that their catastrophic personal loss was not for nothing. Lastly, an unusual type of rogue trader: Inquisitors. Now, given an Inquisitor's remit, taking up a warrant of trade seems not to really fit with what an Inquisitor is generally tasked with carrying out for the Imperium. However, the reason for it could be less enviable. the Inquisitor may have found themselves in an unfortunate internal political situation, and rogue trader status being their last resort of servitude. The main difference between this and other rogue traders is that an Imperial Inquisitor will likely already be significantly well equipped. While no longer having the almost limitless support of the Inquisition, they'll be more than capable of carrying out their new role with furious devotion. They'll carry on as they did within the Imperial systems, but now travelling outside this realm to bring the Imperial laws to the lawless, hunting down and eradicating the enemies of the Imperium of Man. While often rogue traders are thought of as somewhat small-level individuals who trade, explore, and bring the word of the Emperor or locate technology of value, they shouldn't be thought of as just a small crew of almost smuggler pirates. While it's true that there are those that fit that description, a rogue trader is a force to be reckoned with, and while they may spend a decent amount of time charting, investigating and trading, they could equally, if the situation warranted it, raise an army and start their own localized independent war. For a rogue trader, beginning a war is clearly not something to be taken lightly, but if they feel the situation warrants it and they have the means to do so, they're more than capable and confident enough to bring the power and ferocity of the Emperor to those who deserve to see what their defiance has brought down upon them. Often already experienced in strategy and military organisation, a rogue trader will be more than capable in coming up with a decent plan to wage their personal war. Recruiting could be on a mercenary basis or requisitioning troops from the Imperium itself, though this can present its own problems. Because while mercenaries can be quick to find and offer a fluid, malleable force to work with, the downside being decent mercenaries aren't going to be coming cheap. Imperial Guard requisitions can be similarly difficult. An Imperial planetary governor may not want to part with a well-equipped and trained defense force, not to mention the fact that Imperial governors usually carry about as much political weight and power as a rogue trader, and this could then end up becoming a difficult and wasteful impasse. It will take all of a rogue trader's scheming and diplomatic skills to best raise a capable force without wasting significant assets and still retaining enough resources for their campaign. The last source for them to turn to would be the Adeptus Astartes, and the likelihood of Marines assisting a rogue trader though is not high unless they have similarly aligned goals. Hopefully what this should illustrate is that the conflict and dealings of the far future are far more detailed than you might imagine. It's easy to become saturated and enamoured with tales of heroic and superhuman Primarchs and their sons. All too easy to be filled with morbid curiosity at the dark corners of reality that bleed into our own material universe. But with all the world-ending conflicts and tales of legendary figures, it's worth to simply remember that for all these godlike figures, there are billions upon billions of human souls that still constitute the Imperium of Man, and they all have their tales to tell as well. There's much more that can be said about rogue traders. They're a long-established feature of the Imperium and have a woven, rich tapestry of history and stories of note. All rogue traders will have a ferocious appetite for success, and they're only granted the glory and power that their position offers because of the undeniable personal skills and powerful natures that they own. Merchants, nobles, warriors, scoundrels, missionaries, pirates, diplomats, and psychopaths. Rogue traders represent a truly human spirit, and something that is undeniable in the success of humanity's propagation throughout the stars. That of continual and unreserved adaptability, combined with a white-hot passion to achieve the impossible and never give up, never back down, and always keep the faith. We'll talk more about these unusual Imperial individuals in future content, but for now and as always, if you enjoyed, drop a like on the video and let the Emperor be your light.